Howdy, my name is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGameLLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to be taking a look at my top 20 solo board games as of March 2021. So I play a lot of games in order to learn the rules, and the best way that I found to do this is by playing the solo versions of game. Now, after playing lots of games solo, I've really found that I really enjoy solo gaming. I love diving into the mechanisms and figuring out the puzzle of each game and really coming to terms with this awesome experience that I found myself in. So I really enjoy solo gaming and the whole variety that it brings with its different themes and genres, and I love the fact that it's always my turn. So let's get into the list. We're going to go ahead and start with number 20, and this is actually a series of games. This is the That's Pretty Clever line of games. So we have Ganshon Clever and Dopplet So Clever. Now, out of the two of these, I do prefer Dopplet So Clever. I think it offers a little bit more choice, but I also really like Ganshon Clever because it's very simple and straightforward in what it does, and it does it super well. So these games are roll and write style games. You'll be rolling some dice and drafting those dice. And the dice themselves, have, obviously, pips, and if you pick a higher level dice, then you're going to lose the ability to pick any of the lower level dice. So you have to kind of pick and choose whether it's worth taking a higher dice and losing access to some of the lower ones, or if you're going to pick some lower ones and hopefully roll good again on your next consecutive roll. So I really like the choice there. In addition, my favorite part of this game is the satisfying combos that you're going to be making. Every time you draw something in, you have the potential to unlock a bonus action, and I think it's a lot of fun when you're able to set up lots of combos and get a lot of unlocks. And I think that's why I find myself coming back to this game a lot. It's a great game to bring on a plane. It's a great game to just play on the couch. This is an awesome little solo game. I really enjoy it. And that's the Dopplet So Clever line, That's Pretty Clever line. That's my number 20. Now, there's a new one coming out soon, and I'm very excited to try it out. So we'll see how it is. So that's number 20, the That's So Clever line. Up next, we have my number 19, a very different game, and this is This War of Mine, the board game. This is based off a video game that has you in a civil war, and you are the civilians in this civil war. So you are living the day-to-day life trying to survive. You're in a home of other survivors, and your job is to forage for food and make sure that your community that you've created survives this terrible time until help arrives. So it's very fascinating game, very great theme, and the theme is very strong throughout. It's very somber tone, and it has you really living this life. Now, my favorite part about this game is the exploration mechanic. You'll pick an area that you want to go every night, and you'll send some of your survivors out, and they'll go and explore that area. If it's farther away, you'll have more time. If it's closer, it's farther away, you'll have less time. If it's closer, you'll have more time. And I find that really cool. And the time is represented through these cards, exploration deck. And whenever you do something at the location, you have to spend cards off the top of your deck. Or you could just reveal the top card of your deck and see what happens. So I really like the randomization of this, and I really just enjoy the entire story that it tells. It has an entire book of scripts that has lots of very detailed things, and you're only going to scratch the surface every time you play, so it keeps you coming back. My favorite way to play this is using the scenarios. I love the scenarios from the Ruined City expansion. That's the first major expansion for this game. And I think it's just a lot of fun. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a very interesting theme, as well as something that you can really think about as you play. So a very thoughtful experience. This War of Mine, my number 19. My number 18 is one that's much newer to this list. It's one of my favorite games from last year, and this is going to be the Dwellings of Eldervale. So Dwellings of Eldervale has you playing a fantasy race, going out to explore this new land and living amongst it, building these dwellings out. Now, the cool thing about this solo mode is it actually has its own personal faction, the Ghosts of Eldervale. And they're a group that gets stronger the more their units are defeated. And I think that's really cool. It poses a real threat when it comes to combat, and you have a kind of a puzzle-esque board that you get to kind of predict where they're going to be playing on the board to follow your actions. So I find that really interesting. You could set out with a strategy and try to counterplay whatever they're going to be doing, but also further yourself. Now, my favorite part of Dwellings of Eldervale has to be the dungeon cards. The dungeon cards have all sorts of special powers that deal with the different elements that you get to pick, and you get to pick 4 different elements to play with every game. So you have a lot of variety because there's 8 in total, and you're not going to see the cards all the time being the same. So there's a lot of cool options and a lot of great combinations in this game. I really like Dwellings of Eldervale, the variety of powers, the cool elements and choices you can make. Awesome game. That's my number 18, Dwellings of Eldervale. My number 17 is a game that I really enjoy, and this is a small little deck building game called Heroes of Tenefyr. Now in Heroes of Tenefyr, you play as a group of heroes, and you're going to be going through dungeon to dungeon using deck building. So deck building is really unique. You're going to have a deck of cards, and every round you're going to reveal 3 cards from this deck. And you can keep on discarding your hand over and over and over again until you get the hand you want. But sometimes you might have to, think about, hey, maybe I'll just keep this hand, because that deck is your life force, and it's your entire time in the dungeon. Once you're out of cards, you're out. You can't keep going. And if you do get kicked out without winning, you're going to get penalized. So it's a really cool balance between knowing when to go further and knowing when to settle with what you have. So I really like the twist on the mechanisms of the deck building here. But the solo mode does something really special. That's probably my favorite part of this, is you're actually going to be constructing a deck that acts as both players. So you get to take 2 turns in a row. It's really cool. You're able to set up really neat combos that way, and you really get to make this deck your own. It gives me feelings like when I play Yu-Gi-Oh! When I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! You're searching through your deck for combos. It's very different than a lot of other deck builders, because there's a lot of combo making, customization, and you're constantly searching your deck, rifling through, and I think that's a lot of fun, the whole aspect of, checking and searching. So I really like Heroes of Tenefyr, the customization, the really cool classes, and that's another cool thing about the solo, is you get to combine multiple classes into the same deck, and I think that's a blast. So my number 17, Heroes of Tenefyr. My number 16 is going to be another style of dungeon diving, but this time you're going to be using card-based, instead of having deck building, it'll be card driven, but miniatures, moving on a map style game, lots of dice rolling. And this is going to be Altar Quest. So in Altar Quest, it uses the modular deck system. So you'll pick a dungeon, you'll pick a hero that you want to be, and then you'll pick a quest, and then you'll pick the things that populate that dungeon. So the different types of minions and the boss you'll be going against. So you'll combine all those and you'll have your scenario. It's a lot of fun to just jump into, have a great time going through, and there's even a campaign if you want to have something interconnected. So my favorite part about this whole experience is the mana system and the card system. On your turn, you get 3 actions, and whenever you do something, generally you'll be able to spend some of the magic that's floating in the air. And when you do that, you'll take the magic, you'll re-roll it, and it'll come out randomly as what else is floating there, so what it turns into. Usually they're going to give some power to a card. Usually it's a minor power, but generally it can be a pretty big deal. And if you're able to chain consecutive magic, it's really fun, really exciting. I really enjoy Altar Quest. And inversely, you have the villains, and they can also use the magic, so you want to be careful not to provide them with things that they can use against you. So I think there's a lot to love here in Altar Quest. There's lots of characters, and they have all sorts of missions and quests. There's a lot to love here, and the combinations are endless. So super fun. I love Altar Quest. So that's number 16. My number 15 game is a small engine building game called Imperial Settlers: Empires of the North. So in this game, you're going to take a group of settlers, go figure, and you're going to use their deck as best you can to score points. Now, I really like this game's solo mode because it has specific solo scenarios. You'll take your deck and you'll have random events that happen, and these events are tailored to the scenario. So you could do things like fighting giants at your ice wall. You could be farming. You could be traveling around a little island. You have lots of different choices between what you play, and the factions make this game really interesting. Each one plays very differently, and you're going to be doing your best to play all your cards, get all your combos going, and once again, it's always your turn, so you never have to worry about anything bad happening except from those random events. Now, it does balance this with having the actions get more expensive the more often you use them, and it's a cool little puzzle to kind of figure out how you want to mitigate that increased cost. You can use your action pawns in a specific way to decrease the cost. So my favorite part of this game are the different factions. I love how they all play differently, and I really enjoy the Roman factions the most. I think they offer some really cool combos, and I really like the restrictions they place on you with their either the large hordes of people you got to feed or the foundations in one of the Flavian expansion, I think. So a really cool game. This is Imperial Settlers: Empires of the North. My number 14 takes us to an alternate reality where we have discovered time travel, but in a terrible way. We have received a message from the future saying that the world is going to be ending soon. We have a giant meteor coming, and we got to prepare to evacuate the planet. And this is Anachrony. So in Anachrony, you are going to control a community of people, and your job is to prepare to leave and leave. If you don't even get to score. So the game is at its core a worker placement game. You're going to have workers that you'll be putting inside of your own little home base to take actions, and also you'll be putting them into these mech suits to send them out into the toxic planet's surface. So you're going to be doing that to get resources, build buildings, recruit new survivors to your base, all in this wonderful package with really quick turns and a wonderful AI system. So the AI in this game is really awesome. You have a simple die that you roll, and it will determine what actions the AI takes. And the AI takes actions very simply, so it's a really easy AI system to follow for such a complex, heavy game. And my favorite part about this game is actually the new update to the solo mode. It actually allows you to play with some of the expansions, and I think that's a lot of fun. You're able to use the exploration module, you're able to use the new the time module where you're able to blink your people around. And I think it's a lot of fun trying to mix and match the different expansions, and I just think the system is just begging to get played all the time. So I really like Anachrony. I think they did a great job, and the new Infinity Box here helps get it to the table and is super well organized. They did a great job with this game. So that's Anachrony. Up next on my list, my number 13 is going to be Kingdom Death Monster. So Kingdom Death Monster I prefer at a cooperative game, but at a solo game, it's wonderful. So Kingdom Death Monster has you in control of a bunch of survivors in a nightmare horror world. So you are clinging to life as you are going from hunt to hunt, taking down these beasts and stripping them from their body parts and bringing them into your settlement to innovate and create new things so you can go back out and survive these horrors that are coming to take you down. So it's a really fascinating game. I love the solo aspect here because you're in control of all the decisions, you get all the choices, and you can play the game exactly how you want to play. It's up to you if you win, it's up to you if you fail, and I think it's really cool that you can kind of get really personal with this game of survival. Now, my favorite part about the solo experience is probably just the settlement management as a whole. Getting to decide what kind of career paths you want to go, what kind of proficiencies. You could definitely go for the optimal ones, but it also is fun to explore new strategies. So I really enjoy Kingdom Death Monster. The solo experience is definitely a time-consuming one, but it is a super fun one. There were times where I've had this on my table for maybe months and just kept on going back to it. It's very addicting, the gameplay loop, the settlement, hunt, showdown, repeat. It's a lot of fun. If you are really excited to get invested in a game, this is a great one to get invested in. So that's Kingdom Death Monster, my number 13. The next game on the list is a wonderful solo game, and this is number 12. This is Cloudspire. So Cloudspire is from Chip Theory Games. It has you playing as a faction in the sky. Your whole deal is you're trying to get the source. It's this electric substance that's found in the clouds that you use to power all your equipment and your units and your troops and everything. And it's a battle for this source. Now, the solo mode specifically has you playing as a scenario book. You're going from mission to mission to mission, and what you do in one scenario will affect the next one. And it tells a giant story about the factions on the island. And I think that's a great touch. You're going through the history of the area of Cloudspire. I think it's called Ankar. And you have all of this really cool lore mixed in with really interesting scenarios. So the scenarios are tough, and they're obviously going to be this really interesting puzzle. At its heart, Cloudspire is a tower defense game, so it's all about being able to navigate the enemy towers while positioning yourself to complete the objectives that are facing you. So it has these great scenarios, and it also has an endless wave mode, and I like that if you're trying to learn the abilities of your different factions. So this is a wonderful game, lots of cool options. It's also great, competitive and cooperative. I think there's a lot to love in the Cloudspire game. So that's my number 12, Cloudspire. And the last game on this list is a huge favorite of mine. This is going to be Feast for Odin, my number 11. So Feast for Odin has you playing as a settlement of Vikings, but this is not a battle Viking game. This is more of a, how do the Vikings live here? What are they doing? You're going to be taking your crew and you're going to be going out and exploring islands. You're going to be hunting. You're going to be foraging the mountains. You're going to be trading, foraging. You can do some pillaging, but it's not super dramatic. The combat's not crazy. It's a die roll with some mitigation, but really interesting game. At its heart, Feast for Odin is a worker placement game where every round you're going to get a worker. It just happens. So you're going to progressively get stronger as you play, and your actions are going to scale as you play. Now, really cool aspect here, the action system in this game has you placing one worker to do a weaker version of an action, or more workers to do a better version of the action. And I think that's a perfect concept here. The board is really neat as everything is grouped based on the thing the action does, hunting, gathering, etc. And I really like the layout of the whole thing. Now, the other cool thing about this game is the way the solo mode is actually handled. You're going to be replacing your workers with an additional set of workers, and your workers are going to be blocking themselves. So I think that's really cool. My favorite part of this game is trying to, manipulate what actions you're taking. That way you can set yourself up for the next turn. It's really cool. And I really just enjoy the broad amount of choices that you're going to get in this game. You have these occupation cards that are going to give you a strategy from turn one, and I think it's a lot of fun to kind of pick and choose what things you want to be doing, because this game really is a huge sandbox game with a lot of choices, and I love the idea of the puzzle that it presents. Now, I didn't even mention that this game is actually a polyomino game. So you're going to have these little pieces, and you're going to be fitting them into little spaces on your boards and on exploration boards, and that offers a huge puzzle on its own, in addition to all the other resource gathering and whatnot. So it's this huge mishmash of mechanisms and mechanics, and I think it works beautifully in this simple package. So I think they did a great job. Uwe Rosenberg killed it with Feast for Odin. Love this game. So that's my number 11 for solo games. And that's all we're going to cover right now. I'll have another video out with my 10 to 1, but I really enjoy all these solo games. If you get any of them, you're going to be happy with your purchase. They're all very different in the way they do things, but I think that's why I like them so much. If you have any questions about what I talked about here, please let me know down in the comments below. I hope some of you found this interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Side Game Strong.